Good morning, everyone. I'm Owen Rose from Acteon. Thank you all for coming. Great to see so many people here, taking a break already from the rigors of learning technologies. So I hope in the next 20-25 minutes or so I can give you enough of a nudge to keep you awake and engaged through this session. If you don't know Acteon already, you can get to know us really well because we're just there on stand D22. So we create blended learning and communication solutions for clients of all shapes and sizes. Clients including people like Royal Mail, Co-op, Channel 4, Bayer, Priory Group, and people like that. We use a wide variety of digital technologies as part of those solutions. And we'd be very happy to talk further, show you some examples of our work if you want to drop by our stand. But this morning, I want to share some insight from the work that we do with our clients. And in particular, I want to talk about nudges. So nudges are an idea that really we've co-opted from the behavioural sciences, where they've proved to be a really powerful way of driving positive behaviour change. So I want to talk about a few examples of nudges, and then look at what makes them effective, and then look at what we can learn from that and bring into learning design. And hopefully I will wrap that all up, I hope, in a case study example from some of our work with Channel 4. So this isn't a presentation specifically about learning technologies, but it certainly, I hope, will help people think about how you might use learning technologies. And maybe as you're in the show, over the next day or so, you can think about how maybe what you're seeing and what you're hearing might be fitting into this idea of driving behaviour change and giving people a little nudge along the way. So, the focus really is on behaviour change, and I hope that's why there's lots of people here, and I hope that was the hook really, because I think ultimately that's what we're about. We're trying to deliver impact for our organisations, we're trying to deliver impact for our clients, and that usually requires some sort of behaviour change. So we might want people to do something completely new, we might want them to do more of something positive, a bit less of something negative, but whatever it is, we're ultimately usually trying to influence behaviour. So you can imagine in compliance areas, we want people to be safe and secure and legal. In performance areas, we might want people to adopt particular techniques, procedures, processes that are going to make them more effective and more efficient. And if we think about people areas, we want to influence positive behaviour towards customers, between colleagues, maybe with the public, depending on what your organisation does, perhaps within leadership as well. So often we're really about influencing behaviour to deliver impact. And I guess we could characterise what learning and development is trying to do is build the understanding and skills that underpin behaviour, positive behaviour and behaviour change. So that people can use those behaviours and deliver impact. And that's certainly the way that we like to encourage our clients to think about their challenges. What is it you're trying to achieve? What's the impact that you want? What are the behaviours that really underpin that? And then how can we build the skills and the understanding that make that happen? But it's tough. I think anyone who works in L&D knows how tough that is. It's hard to change behaviour. And a key reason for that, I think, is because often understanding and skills aren't enough. And that's really where nudges come in. So just to explain a bit more, let's take an example, a commonplace everyday example of where knowledge and skills might not be enough to change behaviour. So, mandatory speed limits. I guess most people here are drivers. And as drivers, we all have a pretty good understanding of mandatory speed limits. We know why they're in place, we know what these types of signs mean, we know what the sanctions are if we don't follow these signs. We have a good awareness of that. And I guess most drivers, on the whole, have a pretty decent skill in terms of controlling the speed of a car. So we have the knowledge and we have the skills. But despite that knowledge and skill, lots of us, most of us, sometimes, will not use the appropriate behaviour and will not follow mandatory speed limits. And I'm not talking about kind of, reckless, willful idiots who are, deliberately speeding and breaking speed limits. I'm talking about that kind of everyday behaviour. You're distracted, you're in a bit of a rush, you're being tailgated by some idiot behind, so you're pushing on a bit. For whatever reason, for lots of everyday, normal, human reasons, you're not using the appropriate behaviours and staying within the speed limit. That's quite a trivial example, an example of where understanding and skills don't necessarily lead to the appropriate behaviour. And I think if you maybe reflect on the kind of challenges that you have in your organisations, the kind of impact you're trying to deliver, and the behaviours that underpin those, how many of those situations really require people to learn something new? And how many of them actually require people to actually use skills and understanding they already have, but they're just not using at the moment, or they're not using consistently enough? And I think, in many, many cases, with solutions that, or challenges that L&D is trying to tackling, actually the latter case is much more prevalent. It's not so much about teaching people new things, it's about helping them to use skills and understandings they already have. And I think certainly in conversations we have with clients, that's particularly true in compliance areas. It comes up over and over again. People know how to do this, but they just don't do it. And again, we're not talking about willful malpractice here. This is everyday stuff. People are busy. People are distracted. They use well-established shortcuts. They bow to peer pressure. People tell, this is just the way we do it here. Don't worry about that other stuff you've heard about or you've been taught. And there's also that innate human tendency to overconfidence. I don't need to follow that procedure or use that. I got this covered. I know how to do it. So all of these things can mean that we don't use skills and understanding that we do have about the right things to do and the sorts of behaviours we should be following. And we can all, put this into our everyday lives. It's, riding your bike without the crash helmet. It's, writing down your password when you really shouldn't, but that's the only way you're going to remember it. It's maybe, walking past that spill you really should clear up, but maybe somebody else will do it because you're very busy and you're doing something else. So those are quite trivial examples to illustrate the principle that skills and understanding themselves may not be enough to change behaviour. So we can train people and we can teach them, and that training might be really good, and people might even remember it. That doesn't mean to say that they'll act on it. And just one example really of when that can have very big consequences. And I've chosen this example in particular. You may remember it. So this was a scandal that really took place between 2005 and 2009 at the Mid Staffordshire Hospitals Trust. There was a gradual and complete breakdown in standards of care, to the extent that people were actually dying as a result of the breakdown in care practice. It was a huge scandal. There was lots of inquiries and investigations. And one of the really interesting and troubling findings from those investigations was that a lot of the people who were at the heart of it, people who were eventually disciplined or struck off, were very experienced practitioners. They'd had lots of training. They knew what they should have been doing. They knew the behaviours they should have been using but they weren't using them. And in this case, the consequences were devastating. So we need to think about that as people involved in L&D and learning and design, and think about, yes, we can create great materials to build skills and build understanding, but what are we doing to actually help people then act on that and use those behaviours consistently and reliably? And that's something we're working very hard on, and comes a lot into our thinking at Acteon. And we think, obviously, it's not just enough to build skills and understanding. We sometimes need to give people a bit of a nudge along the way. Okay, so I'm talking about nudge here in the sense that it's used in the behavioural sciences, so that a nudge is providing people with simple, positive and timely prompts to good behaviour choices. So we'll use this definition, a feature of the environment that attracts our attention and alters our behaviour. And in this context, a feature of the environment can certainly include a communication or learning intervention. Now, as I said, it's quite a well-established idea. You may already be familiar with it. If you're interested and you want to find out more, this is probably the best starting point, I think. So it's a book by two American academics, Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. They're really kind of, not exactly founders, but they're key figures in this area. And in this book, they explain a lot about how an effective nudge works and give lots and lots of examples of where nudges are causing positive behaviour change. In the UK, probably the most prominent and well-known examples of nudges are to do with a group called the Behavioural Insights Team. So this was a unit that was set up under the Blair government to look at how to help implement social policy. So it's saying, how can we help people make good choices about health, about diet, about finance. So the Behavioural Insights team are very active in this area in the UK. So probably the best way to illustrate nudges is to look at a few examples. So I'll just We'll look at a few now and then try to sum up what makes these things effective and what can we take from that. So just to go back to our speeding example, here's a nudge. Now actually, authorities use lots of nudges to try and encourage us to use appropriate behaviour when we're driving. So there are TV ad campaigns about speeding, there are speed cameras, and there are fines and so on. But it turns out that this is one of the most effective nudges that can provide. So you may well be familiar with these sort of signs. They're coming into the UK more now. They're very prevalent, a bit more prevalent on the continent, certainly in Germany. So we all know how it works. You're entering a speed-controlled area. If you're at the speed limit or underneath it, you get a smiley face. If you're above it, you get a frowny face. If you adjust your speed quite quickly to drop under, you can turn that frowny face into a smile. And it turns out these are incredibly effective. They're much more effective than cameras at controlling people's speed, because they're immediate. We all instinctively understand what it means, and it turns out we're not all as cynical as we think we might be. We actually want people to smile at us. We like getting the smiley face. So this is a very powerful nudge which has proved very effective in changing people's behaviour. Moving to a completely different area. This is work that comes from the Behavioural Insights team in the UK. Every year the HMRC sends, I think it's between 50 and 70 million letters chasing tax payment, overdue tax payment. So a big driver for them is how can we change people's behaviour around this? It would be really great if we could get people to pay on time. We'd collect the revenue faster and we wouldn't have to spend so much time chasing people. And typically, you may have experience of this. So a letter comes from tax office and the letter will have some sort of sanction. It will be a reminder of the deadline and a reminder of the penalty if you fail to meet the deadline. HMRC work with the Behavioural Insights team to say, can we make these things work better? How can we change the prompt that we're giving to get more effective responses to these letters and faster payment of outstanding tax? And so what the Behavioural Insights team discovered was, if they change the first sentence of the letter to say, in your local area, most people pay their taxes on time. So they take out the penalty, they take out the sanction. There's just a positive message that says, most people, like you, pay their taxes on time. They achieved a 15% uplift in the recovery of outstanding tax revenue just by changing that one line of the letter. So they were able to find a really effective nudge to change people's behaviour around tax payment. Another nudge, you may or may not be familiar with this one. These are, sorry to lower the tone, but these are urinals at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. And there's a nudge in the picture. The backstory to this really is, it turns out that, gentlemen, we are not as accurate as we might like to think when using facilities like this. And if you manage very large public buildings, very large, busy public buildings, the costs of dealing with that inaccuracy are actually quite high. And a facilities manager at Schiphol Airport had this challenge, and I was thinking, how can I change behaviour here and increase accuracy? And he had the very simple but brilliant idea of putting a target in place. So the fly that's printed on your eye is actually very specifically put there as a target. And it turns out to be incredibly effective. Spillage rates were reduced by about 60 to 80%, and there was a pretty tangible saving in the cleaning costs as a result of that. So that's I think a really classic example of effective behavioural nudge. It's so simple. You don't even have to think about it. There isn't a sign saying aim for the fly or anything like that. It speaks directly to a human instinct. It's incredibly simple what you have to do, and it has a very positive impact on behaviour. Okay. So nudges work really, really well when they're designed right into the process. But you can't always do that. You can't always re-engineer a process, or maybe the behaviours are complex and varied, so you can't re-engineer all of those processes. But another way you can think about nudges, and this is particularly relevant to learning and development, is you can think about implanting an idea that comes readily to mind at the right time and helps to prompt appropriate behaviour. And a great example of that is this anti-littering campaign from the US. So the authorities in Texas had a real problem with the behavior of roadside littering, to the extent that they were spending $20 million a year on clearing up litter from roadsides. And of course, you know, they had tried all sorts of sanctions and campaigns to try and change behavior, all with very little effect. And the kind of apocryphal story about how they finally solved this was in some meeting where they were, you know, tearing their hair out over this $20 million they're spending every year, and why can't they change people's behavior. Someone said, you know, oh, you know, Texans, you know, they're so proud. The more you tell them to do one thing, they're going to do the opposite. And the light bulb moment for someone was say, well, we have to harness that. We have to harness that pride and that stubbornness, and we have to use it. So the result was a campaign which said, don't mess with Texas, which made the idea of littering your state kind of unpatriotic, anti-Texan. So now it was okay. So previously a behavior before or would have, so not littering would have been a kind of unacceptable behavior because you'd have been conforming. But now, by not littering, you're actually conforming with the stereotype of the Texan. You're proud about your state, you don't want to mess it up, and you don't want anyone else messing it up either. So a very simple change of thinking, linking with these core ideas that people held, proved an incredibly effective prompt to behaviour change. So in the first year that this campaign was used, littering rates dropped by nearly 30%, I think, and after 6 years they'd reduced by 72%. So it had a transformative effect. Obviously that was very heavily campaigned out across the state, but this is the one that proved effective. So it was a little nudge that got inside people's mind, they could remember it, and they were happy to act on it, and it proved incredibly effective. So there's a few examples of nudges. So what can we take from that? What makes these things effective? Well, the behavioural insights team have looked at that quite a lot, and they've identified these 4 key principles or ideas, characteristics that make for an effective behavioural nudge. It needs to be easy, attractive, social, and timely. So easy. It makes the behaviour easy to do. It's clear what you have to do, and it's easy to do it. So I guess a good example of that then would be the urinal. The fact it's so easy you don't even have to think about it. It just directs an instinctive, natural behaviour. The smiley face one. You know, it's very easy. We get immediately what we have to do in order to change our behaviour there. Attractive. It positions the behaviour as something that we want to do, that's aligned with us. And the classic example of that obviously was the Texas anti-littering campaign. So it transformed the behaviour that previously was unattractive, because it wasn't to do with who I was or who I think I am, into one that's fine. It's okay, I can do this. In fact, I want to do it because I'm a proud Texan. Make it social. And that really means socially relevant. So linking our basic human instinct to be aligned with what other people are doing. So again, we saw in the example of the tax letter, that line that said, other people, or most people in your local area pay their tax on time. This is what most people are doing, and on the whole, as humans, we want to be like most other people. We can also think about social relevance, perhaps in the example of the smiley face one. That's a very human instinct to get a smiley face rather than a frowny face. And another social component to that one is everybody else can see it. Other drivers behind, pedestrians, whatever, can see, have this kind of behaviour check on what my behaviour is. And I want to be seen to be conforming, to be doing the right thing. And then finally we have timely. You need to get the nudge as close to the behaviour as possible to make it effective. And we saw, particularly, obviously the best way to do that is to be able to re-engineer the process. So the fly in the urinal is the perfect example of a timely nudge. The speed sign example is great. It happens right at the time when we need to change our behaviour, so it's timely. Now we also acknowledge we can't always do that, so another way to make it timely is to try and implant an idea in people's mind that they will hold, and that will prompt them to the appropriate behaviour when it's time to actually make that behaviour choice. So nudges are effective prompts to positive behaviour change when they are easy, attractive, social and timely. So what can we take from that? How can we try to build these features into learning and communication solutions to drive positive behaviours for impact in our organisations? Well, I think we can. and this is work we're doing at Acteon, and it's proved to be very positive. So I want to set these ideas in the context of a specific example. That's all right. So I'll just talk through that example and try to highlight the things we did to try and make this intervention easy, attractive, social, and timely. So the work is a project that we did with Channel 4, actually a couple of years ago now. It was one of our first engagements with Channel 4. We do quite a lot of work with them in different areas. And the Channel 4, fantastically exciting organisation, boundary pushing, risk taking, wonderful to work with. Our first engagement with them was on their code of conduct training, which is unfortunately not quite as maybe as sexy as we'd have liked it to be. And therein was a challenge. So the training was in code of conduct, and the intention was to ensure that standards of professional behaviour at Channel 4 were meeting the expectations of the organisation. And obviously in an organisation that is about risk-taking and boundary pushing, that kind of stuff is perceived as very dull and not really very Channel 4. So in that sense, it was a challenge not unlike the Texas littering one. We had to try and engage people with behaviours which perhaps didn't sit very comfortably with who they thought they were. And the solution itself was a blended learning program, so it was a core of responsive e-learning content, delivered from our learning management platform, Knowledge Centre, which you can visit on stand D20 today. So it's responsive e-learning, delivered from a learning portal, surrounded with a whole range of digital and offline communication channels as well. So that's what the program was. It proved fantastically effective, and we think that's because we managed to turn it into a very effective nudge to change behaviour. So how did we do it? So how did we make it easy for people to change their behaviour? Well, in this kind of area, professional conduct, obviously that's played out in all sorts of ways. So we're talking about conduct in terms of sending emails externally, in dealing with clients and suppliers, in managing your IT, in managing your expenses, all sorts of wide areas. How can we make that easy? So we said to Channel 4, look, there's no point in training people intensively in all these different behaviours. We've got to reduce that to make it easy and memorable. That's what you have to do. So in fact, we reduced all of those behaviours to one behaviour. And that was the behaviour of checking your conduct and asking, is this okay? So when you're about to send that email slagging off ITV, just stop a second and think, is this okay? If you're about to make that expenses claim for drinks after work, just before you put it in, think, is this okay? Does this meet the expectations of professional conduct at Channel 4? And so this is it okay became a theme that was woven throughout the materials to reinforce that core behaviour, and it proved very powerful and effective. And we also snuck in a bit of the social as here as well, because one of the criteria to check is this behaviour okay was to ask, what would my colleagues think about this? So what do the people who I care about think about what I'm about to do? So we were also making it a bit social there as well. So we sought to make it easy by reducing it to this very simple, is it okay question. And those of you who watch Channel 4 and watch the last leg on Friday nights will also know that is it okay is a theme that is already prevalent at Channel 4 and something they use in their broadcast output. We had to make it attractive. So by attractive, I don't just mean nice to look at. I mean, how did we make these behaviours attractive to people? So how did we make these dull professional conduct behaviours attractive to people who see themselves as risk takers and boundary pushers and in this very exciting cutting edge organisation? Well, the way we tried to do that was really to absolutely link the two together. So woven throughout the materials, throughout the learning experience, is an idea that Channel 4 can push boundaries, it can take risks, it can do all this exciting stuff that it does because it's an organisation of exemplary professionals who don't make stupid mistakes, whose conduct is excellent. And that was encapsulated in an idea that we used throughout the materials. We said, Channel 4, we're risky, but we're not reckless. So throughout, we were making links between why these dull but important professional conduct choices underpin the things that are really exciting about Channel 4 and the things that motivate people. So that was the theme that ran throughout, to make these behaviours attractive. We wanted to make it social, and by social, we're not talking explicitly about social media, although social media might be a big part of doing this. But as you've seen already, we were trying to link in the social relevance by encouraging people to think about what their colleagues and what viewers would think about their behaviours. But another key way we did this was to build in contributions from across the organisation directly into the content. So that messages, key messages and examples of behaviours were being delivered by people's peers and colleagues and people they respected within the organisation. So in some cases these were very well-known faces, like Jon Snow and Una King. In other cases they were people who, they were, one might say, rank and file colleagues. Of course, they were Channel 4 people talking about the importance of these behaviours and how these behaviours help them do what they love doing at Channel 4. So we were making the content socially relevant in the context of Channel 4 colleagues. And then the final point we said for was making it timely. Now obviously we couldn't re-engineer all these processes, we couldn't be there at the time. Everyone is someone who's making a conduct decision at Channel 4 and give them a little nudge to the right behaviour. But one of the ways we tried to implant this idea of checking your conduct, is it okay, was to deliver the learning as a campaign. So rather than just one hit, which people will forget very quickly no matter how exciting and dramatic the one hit is, the content was delivered over a 6-week period, and it was backed up by all sorts of internal communication channels, both digital and offline. So we were using video teasers, we were using their intranet. They have a message of the day channel, they have internal poster boards. We also use something called a desk drop, where they literally put hard copy materials on people's desks. And so those channels were woven into this 6-week campaign with an idea of really putting a focus on positive professional conduct and embedding this idea of checking your behaviour and asking, is this okay? So those were some of the approaches we used to make this digital blended learning programme an effective nudge to behaviour change. And it was very, very successful. We had fantastic adoption, learners enjoyed the experience, we got great user feedback, had a powerful impact on people's perceptions of professional behaviour and their expectations at Channel 4, and crucially, it delivered impact. It actually changed behaviour on a number of key measures that Channel 4 use to audit conduct. So it did prove a very effective nudge to behaviour change, even in this quite challenging environment where we were trying to make dull but necessary behaviours relevant and important to people who probably didn't see themselves in that light. So that's a specific illustration. But to summarise, really, I guess, because we're approaching the end, I said we're about delivering impact. That's what we're trying to do in learning and development. And really a key function of what we do is build the skills and knowledge that help people to make good behaviour choices so they can deliver that impact. But skills and knowledge themselves often are not enough because we're humans and we have lots of external pressures and lots of things influencing our behaviour choices. But if we can make those interventions easy, attractive, social and timely, we have a much better chance of getting that behaviour change and sustaining it. So if your focus is on building skills and knowledge, your focus is on delivering impact, you may want to think as well about giving people a little nudge along the way. So I hope that was interesting. Obviously there's a lot to it. It plays out in many different ways. I'm very happy to, I'll be around here to take questions. I think it's difficult to take questions from the floor, so I'll hang around. If you have questions, I'm very happy to take them here. As I said before, please do come and see us, stand D22. I'll be around all day, my colleagues are there too. We've got some examples of the materials that we created for Channel 4 and other clients, so we can talk to you more about nudges and behaviour change. Thank you very much.